Hi, everyone. I am going to attempt to try to help people understand how I personally work with people and how I gather and interpret information because I get asked this question in every single session. At the end of the session, I like to kind of wrap together, bring together everything that I perceive has come through for the person based on the conversation that we had beforehand and what they experienced during the hypnosis portion of the session. And every single person says, "How did you put that together like that?" Or how I would have never put that together like that, but it makes perfect sense. So this is an attempt to help people understand that when we become in touch with our own selves and the way that we interpret the world around us and become more connected to what I call the divine. And there is a communication that happens that is very symbolic because everything is shown to us in symbols. The world we live in is all about symbols. And so, the easiest way to do this, I recommend and suggest, is that we take a really good, honest look at our own lives. And if you do that, you can, and this is not something that happens super easily. It just happens to be that I have a tremendous amount of free time to myself, and I spent my entire life thinking in this way. And you almost could call this way of thinking kind of psychotic or narcissistic, where I think that sometimes these labels are put on things to distract us from actually finding truth within ourselves. Because if we aren't able to find truth within ourselves, then we are probably living in fear. And that is how we can continue to be controlled. And so, for example, I'm going to use my own life as an example and some very basic things that are very easy to understand. And so, for me personally, for example, but two times before the age of 5 were the only times that I was hospitalized other than having children in my entire life. And one was related to burns, fire. I walked into a sandbox when I was, I think, 2 years old. I don't remember it. And a neighbor had dumped hot charcoal in the sandbox, and I stepped into the sandbox and burned my feet severely. I was in the hospital for quite some time, from what I understand. And then just a year or two later, I was standing on a stool and looking into a fishbowl that was on the television, and the fishbowl fell over. I fell on it, and I got cuts all over my body. And I still have a lot of scars from that incident, and almost punctured my lung. So both of these times were extremely traumatic. And now my job, and my has been my job for 27 years now, is I'm a glass blower. I look at this as this very thing that almost killed me are actually how I make a living in my life today. And so, um, if we go back and look at our lives and the things that happen to us, it is oftentimes in the greatest trauma that we've experienced that has the most answers for us. And through doing that and paying attention to every single thing that shows up in our life currently, every single day, with the knowing that there is information that is constantly coming to help us learn things. Always. As soon as we bring our awareness to every single moment where we are wanting and willing to receive information, the information is always there. It's this constant source of information that is all around us at all times. So even if nothing is happening and you're in the middle of your day and you stop for 1 second and notice whatever thoughts are in your mind, that is information being brought to you at all times. It is bringing awareness to whatever it is that's happening. So much so that this is absolutely happening even while we're sleeping. Dreams are often shown to us in symbols. These things seem to cycle around over years, over months, and come back with even more understanding. It's like chunks of understanding come through, and then I live my life for the next year or two or three or 10 based on this understanding and with this new learning. And I feel like that once I have integrated this learning into my life, then it seems to come back around again on an even deeper level. And so it's a continuous cycle. And so I'll share recently the learning that's been coming through for me. So first of all, I had a session a couple months ago. I've become really good at knowing when something is showing up for me because I'm supposed to pay more attention to it. And I also feel like I've gotten pretty good at knowing that if I were to pay attention to some things, it might just be a waste of my time, that I'm dwelling in something that's probably not going to be useful for me. I did a session a couple months ago, and the book 1984 came into my mind. I'm not going to get sidetracked and get into the details of that. You can watch that session on my YouTube where I get into some more detail about it. That's the video that I posted that's called The Nature of Time. And so after that session, I became intrigued. And I especially became intrigued by the fact that I never read this book because I've heard about George Orwell's 1984 book throughout my entire life. And for some reason, I never had any interest in really reading it. I had no idea what it was about. But in this moment, I knew that I was going to learn something if I finally read this book. And so I started listening to it on audio while I'm working. And as I pretty much did know, it was a prediction about this current time that we're going to be living in, or the things that we are experiencing now. And it is chillingly relevant. I will say that, to the point where I had to take breaks from it. I'm still only maybe three quarters of the way through it. And first of all, the writing is brilliant. And I'm not a big fan of like dystopian stuff, but I do find it fascinating. Like, I really love The Handmaid's Tale and Margaret Atwood, and it intrigues me. I'm so intrigued by how this information is coming through the field and through these people to share the information. I am very connected to people around the same time period, like later 19th century, very early 20th century people. Carl Jung, Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner. Um, I'm very, very Edgar Casey, Tesla. I'm very, very connected to that type of energy, and I can understand the information when I hear it from these people. And so I started reading that book and put it down for a week or two. And then I had a dream one night where it was just before morning, and I was having this dream that was at my actual house. And so I find that when I have dreams that are at my actual house, they tend to be a little more disturbing if they're a disturbing dream, because they feel more real, because it's my real environment that I live in. And so I live on a main road in a very, very small town. It is a lightly traveled main road. My bedroom is right at the road, faces the road. And in my dream, there was a noise coming from outside. It was a sound like I had never heard before. And it wasn't like a disturbing sound. It was a peculiar sound, a very unfamiliar noise that made me want to go outside and see what it was. And so I went outside, and coming down the road, there were these, I think there were more, but I only saw four of these things. And they were these very industrial looking figures. And the one in the front was very tall. It was as tall as my house. And my house is a very tall old farmhouse. It was as tall as my house, and it had these four metal legs on it. And then it had a round ovalish type sphere at the top. It was not a UFO or anything like that. It was very technical looking. And there was someone or something, I could see a figure that was controlling this thing. And so I didn't even know at first if I should be afraid of it because it's not something I'd ever seen before. I was curious and I was trying to figure out what it was. And then a feeling came over me that I knew I should be afraid of it. And as soon as I felt fear, these things started taking off almost at the speed of light, almost to the point where I couldn't even see them moving. And they started just running into these houses, like slamming into houses and totally turning houses into rubble. They weren't blowing up or anything like that. No fire or anything involved. They were just, the houses just completely disintegrated when these things would hit them. And another interesting thing is in my dream, I had a son who was 5 years old. I do not have any sons, and I have two daughters in real life. I had a husband. I've never been married in this real life. And I had a daughter who was a little bit older than my son. And so I grabbed my son and we took off. We had no idea. It was this complete terror. And we were running all through the neighborhood, not knowing what to do. I knew I had to find my husband who was with my daughter. I couldn't find them. And so I felt like I had to get back to my house because they would eventually come and look for us there. On the way back to my house, a girl pulled over. She was in a white station wagon and she had blonde hair. She was in her 20s, I would say. She pulled over next to me and she was handing me a tangerine. And if you could imagine a tangerine being brighter than it actually is in real life, it was like the brightest tangerine you could possibly imagine. And she was handing me this tangerine and she said to me, "You need to eat this because it will be the last one you will ever have." And somehow I knew that that was true. And I was hesitating. And she said, I I know you don't want to eat it because of what's been done to it, but I promise you, you need to eat it because it will be the last one that you will ever have. And so when she said that and I was considering eating it, I saw a grocery store that I was not in the grocery store. I just saw the grocery store and there were people shopping, a fair amount of people. And I knew that this would be the last of the food as we know of food in grocery stores today. And then I saw the grocery store in the future, which was going to be just a very minimal amount of variety items. And all of the boxes were white boxes with black lettering on them. And so, considering if I wanted to take a bite of this tangerine, and the message that came through to me was, and you thought you were prepared for this. And instantly I said to myself, prepared for what? I don't even know what this is. How could I possibly prepare for this? Like I have no idea what this is. Then I woke up from the dream. And so I will say that I have been down some pretty deep rabbit holes with AI and technology. And I don't think that AI is just completely terrible. I think that it's amazing technology. And I also think it's extremely scary technology. And I think it is absolutely both of those things. And so, for those of you who are not familiar with the book 1984, I do highly recommend that you read it because it is amazing that this book was written, I think, in 1947, which is fascinating. And so, with that being said, a few days later, I decided to start listening to the book again. And within 5 minutes of me listening to the book, the main character is reciting a nursery rhyme. And it's about oranges and lemons. And I instantly knew when I heard what was said in the book, it gave me the same exact feeling as I was feeling when the girl said to me, "I promise you, you need to eat this." It was exactly the same feeling when I heard oranges mentioned in this book. And so what I have discovered, because that's when I know to pay attention to something, making the connections between things that give you the same sort of feeling. And the things might seem completely unrelated, but I can promise you they are related. And that's how information is coming through. And that is like the silence between the notes of where all of this language can occur. And so in this rhyme in the book, the oranges are symbolic of innocence. And it is when the girl said that to me, I knew that because of how the future was going to be, that this feeling of innocence before this destruction happened, before the belief that the world was terrible, essentially, was crucial in my survival. That the only way to survive this thing was to remember the innocence that was there before the thing happened. And so when I'm working with people, I am allowing myself to download feelings and emotions. And I know that it's a combination between what the person is saying to me, how I'm relating it to my own self, and how this story comes together. And and if you're listening to the space in between, meaning listening with your entire body, you will be able to interpret the symbolism in a way that makes sense to you and whoever you're communicating with. Because it's not like, oh, this symbol means this thing all the time. Some things are like that, some things are like that, but that what does it mean to us is also very important. And we can't use the logical mind and think, oh, the the tree is always symbolic of growth and whatever it means. It's like, what does that mean to us also? What does it mean to the person that we're communicating with? And once we are able to feel what these things represent on an emotional level, we are able to allow a whole new language to come through that speaks of truth. And it may be truth that doesn't even make sense, but it will eventually make sense. I promise you, because there were things that came after that dream that I had, after the understanding that I had. I was in a session a little bit later where I was for the first time shown what evil actually looks like. I was working with a client, and this happens often where I'm able to see through my client's physical being something that's not there. It's not like what she's talking about. It's just that her body or her body was the vessel in the material world that was allowing me to see what evil looks like. And it's not that she is evil. It's not that. It's like this person she was talking about was evil. This is just a way to actually see the energy of evil, because we all have these energies within us. Every single human being, every single thing that exists, we all have all of the things within us. And so I think that dream was preparation to be able to feel that level of terror and know that, okay, I would have never been able to prepare myself for this because I don't even know what this is. I just have to remember the feeling of innocence, and then I will be able to be shown things as long as I remember that feeling. And that was in preparation for working with my next client, where I was only able to see this evil because I believe that God is the creator of every single thing, that God is awareness, God is the creator of everything, and that God is even the creator of this most evil thing that I've ever seen in real life. And to me in real life, in my real life. And I would not I wouldn't have been able to see that if I didn't know with every single cell of my being that even that is a creation of God. And what it actually is a fragmented soul. That is what a fragmented soul looks like. And that is, in a sense, one way that we could interpret evil. And so, because it is nothing but a fragmented soul, there is absolutely nothing to be afraid of because it's so fragmented to be able to look like that. And the important thing is that I could only see that because I know with every single bit of me that God is the creation of everything and lives within everything. So hopefully that gives a little bit of understanding that if you want to be able to communicate in a different way, take a look at your life and go through your entire life and ask yourself, what how is this connected to my current life? If it's something through your childhood, some kind of trauma, something like that, how did that experience shape and form your life right now? And I if you really do that, I think you will be amazed. This has been my experience with everybody that I work with. It is really actually almost unbelievable that we start to see that everything is programmed in a way that is perfectly orchestrated for us and our lives and what we came here to do. So please share your thoughts, share your comments, and as always, thank you for listening. Enjoy your day.